Good evening. Can you all hear me okay? Well, I want to welcome all of you here on this rainy night, and I want to say that this is a really special reading for me tonight. And no, not because we're discussing body parts. We have with us here tonight one of our original Writers Guild members, a man who often doesn't get to attend our events because he lives in Florida, but he is very supportive of us. So my dad, John Fisher, is here. I will pay for that, I'm sure. I'm also pleased, again, just to see so many of you here tonight. I'm pleased because we have a rare appearance by Terry Plowman, who will be performing a song for us. I'm also pleased because we have Writers Guild member Deb Griffin reading for the first time tonight. I have gotten to know Deb and her writing because I'm working with her in a class, and so I'm thrilled that you all will get to hear a little bit of her work tonight. Mostly, I'm pleased, as I always am when I stand here, because these readings remind me of what the Writers Guild is all about. The way a group of people, telling a story, reading a poem, singing a song, will collectively create a night that is entertaining and fun and compelling. I know from experience, as many of you do, that in the next hour and 15 minutes, we're going to be laughing out loud at times. We might be shaking our heads in disbelief. We might be sitting quietly, just taking in something beautiful or profound that someone is reading. But I also know that the funny stories alone, or the heartfelt poems alone, or the songs, no matter how wonderfully they are performed, would not and could not have the powerful effect that all of them together will have. This is why these readings, more than anything else that the Rehoboth Beach Writers Guild does, is what we are about. A community, each of us better because of the company we are in. And so as always, I thank you for that. Now, I wish this didn't force me to segue into the orange bucket. I wish I could tell you how important and valuable this community is without asking for a donation at the end. In my heart, I don't care about the donations. I really don't. What I care about is that you all are here. And I care that you're sharing your work, and I care that you've come to listen, which is sometimes just as or more important. So that's my heart, and that's really what matters. But my head tells me that we do need money to run the organization. And so, on your way out at the end of this evening, if you have enjoyed this night, I hope that you will put a $5 donation in that orange bucket. And a 20 would be great too, Linda, and we'll make you stick to that. That small donation is not small to us. It keeps us going for another length of time. So with all of that, we're going to begin. We're going to do things just a little bit differently tonight. There were so many body part songs that Stuart could sing that we're not only going to end the night with Stuart, we're going to begin with a song. And so, Stuart Vining.
Sound check, yeah. Voice is right, yeah. Yeah?
The overall volume might be able to go down a hair.
On what? So in keeping with it, the seemingly ongoing theme I have of how do you get to a topic? So So I was thinking about body parts, and the first thing that came to mind was, one of the first things that came to mind was, we used to do the sound check. My guy sang music with. We do big shows sometimes at big auditoriums, and we did this one sound check. Because a lot of body part songs are really just, they're just bawdy limericks with music. That's really what they are. So this one, I happen to know this one limerick. It's about a musician and it's about body parts. Okay. Mary Beth was a little iffy about whether I should say this. She laughs in private, but she gets real worried when you stand up in public and say these things. I'm gonna say it anyway. So this was our sound check. There was a musician from Boston, Mass. His balls were made of Corning glass. When he banged them together, they played Stormy Weather, and lightning shot out of his ass. And when I thought of that, I was thinking about Boston, which reminded me of the song that I'm going to do this evening, which is, mentions lips a couple times, and it's a lot about hips. But I first heard this song about this time of year. It was like January or February of 1960. I'd gotten a crystal radio set for Christmas. I was like 9. So I built this little crystal radio set. You're sitting there in the middle of the night. You got a little earphone left over from World War II, and we had to make an antenna. So we made the antenna out of coat hangers and threw them out the window. So we had a real good antenna. Dad wasn't real happy about that because we cut the screen to throw the coat hangers out the window, but it worked. And you guys may remember when AM radio in 1960 was what you got. I lived in Fairfax, Virginia when it was still country. It was way out in the middle of nowhere. And at nighttime, I can remember right about this time you're sitting by the window in my bedroom with the coat hangers outside, cold as hell, this little earphone on and going. And I got a station in the middle of the night, like you get stations better in the middle of the night. And I got this station out of Boston, hence the connection. Boston was WBZ. And I heard this song in about January, February 1960 is when I first heard this song. There's by a guy named Marty Robbins. And one of the things I like about Marty Robbins, I learned this later, he's a real character, which is why he can write songs this good. He was a country singer and a NASCAR race driver at the time. He didn't make a lot of money at either of them. He wasn't a real good race driver. He never won anything. But one time, about in the 50s, he decided he wanted to run with the big guys. And there were some goofy guys back then. I mean, there were Junior Johnson and Fireball Roberts. I mean, there were some blacked out people racing. And they raced in T-shirts and loafers and no safety stuff. And smoked cigarettes and listened to the radio while they were racing. Yeah. So Marty had his mechanics build a motor that was way illegal, had an extra 200-300 horsepower. When the time came to qualify for the race, he kind of sandbagged it, went a little slow so it looked normal. And then when the race started, he shot right to the front. Maybe 5-6 laps, he was leading the race. He just wanted to run up there with the big boys. Just once in his life, he said, I wanted to do that. And then he pulled off because he didn't want to ruin somebody else's race. But I thought it was rather, when I learned about it much later, I thought, well, that's a pretty gutsy thing to do. You can't do that nowadays. But he did it. It's part of what made him the kind of guy he is, I guess. And he wrote this song. It's a song about it's a cowboy song about gunfighting. And this is what I learned, first started learning, I guess, 53 years ago. It's called Big Iron. To the town of Alfreda rode a stranger one fine day. He didn't talk to folks around him. He didn't have too much to say. No one dared to ask his business. No one dared to make a slip. The stranger there among them had a big iron on his head. Big iron on his head. Early in the morning when he rode into the town, he came riding from the south side, looking all around. He's a bad man running loose, rumors whispered from every lip. He's here to do some business, with a big iron on his head. Big iron on his head. In the town there lived an outlaw by the name of Texas Red. Many men had tried to take him, and then many men were dead. He was vicious and a killer, though a youth of 24. The notches on his pistol numbered 1 and 19 more. 1 and 19 more. The stranger started talking, let it known to those around. He was an Arizona Ranger, wouldn't be too long in town. He had come to take an outlaw back, alive or maybe dead. He said it didn't matter, he was after Texas Red. After Texas Red. Wasn't long before the outlaw heard about his Texas Red. But the outlaw wasn't worried, those who tried before were dead. 20 men had tried to take him, 20 men had made a slip. 21 would be the ranger with a big iron on his head. Big iron on his head. The morning passed so quickly, it was time for them to meet. 20 past 11, and they walked into the street. Folks were watching from the window, everybody held their breath. They knew the handsome ranger was about to meet his death. About to meet his death. There was 40 feet between them when they stopped to make their play. And the swiftness of the ranger still talked about today. Texas Red had not cleared a letter when a bullet fairly ripped. The ranger's aim was deadly with a big iron on his head. Big iron on his head. It was over in a moment, and the folks all gathered round. There before them lay the body of the outlaw on the ground. Oh, he might have gone on living, but he made one fatal slip. Tried to match the ranger with a big iron on his head. A big iron on his head. Big iron, big iron. Don't try to match the ranger with a big iron on his head. Big iron on his head.
Buonasera. What I have, it's a piece entitled The Nose Knows. If you look at the people around you here or at other places, focus like a laser only on that peninsular flesh fastened on their faces we call nose. Eclipse from your sight the remainder of their faces, and you will discover the amazing personality of that stonefish-like part of our body that precedes us wherever we go and whatever we do. You will notice that it comes in various sizes and shapes: button-like, arranged, corpulent, expansive, protruding, square, squashed, Roman, and the like. It has many social skills. It constantly sticks itself in other people's business and then pretends to keep itself clean, when in fact we know that it likes to follow itself to nose about what goes around. Sometimes it exceeds the limits of flattery and changes its color to brown. And when its derisive peers rub it, it puts them out of joint by looking down at them and raises itself in the air in a snobbish fashion. It is very affectionate, as it likes to be touched, scratched, picked, and blown. It prefers to be picked subtly and discreetly, surely not while driving, and absolutely not when standing next to another car at a red light. It is musical. It emits the sound of a clarinet, trumpet, or trombone, according to its size when it is blown. It is susceptible to colds that become stuffy and itchy and running. And when two rivulets drip down its nostrils and flow down to the upper lip, they demand to be blown delicately with a clean handkerchief, at the conclusion of which it is recommended not to open the handkerchief and to look in it to see whether diamonds or oriental pearls have descended from the brain. By the way, it smiles too. Take a good look at your own nose and you will see it.
Tom Richardson.
Thank you. I've usually written and shared with you something funny, and I just wanted to warn you, this one is not. This is. Can you hear me now? Oh, good. That's a commercial. Anyway, this is an ode to our daughter-in-law who died last summer. Our human imagination determines what arrangement of body parts makes one attractive and what doesn't. She obviously had a good arrangement of parts, for our son fell madly in love with her. We met her by phone and couldn't see body parts. Busy, nervous conversation on both our parts. Next, we flew to see her in a state apart from the mainland, and immediately saw what our son liked about her parts. Flighty and anxious, she greeted us from our harrowing trip on a plane whose body parts were of questionable vintage. Aloha, let's get your luggage and go so we can make our dinner reservations. But my clothes that cover my body parts didn't arrive since US Air lost them somewhere over the Pacific part of the world. The next part and the good parts were holidays and a wedding till death do us part, and bonding. Then a body part betrayed us all. It seems that body parts can cause such pain, most of us, for the most part, can't imagine. Interstitial cystitis, an invasion of the bladder, can cripple your life and all the parts you've dreamed about. Career, children, growing old with your love, a day, just one day, without pain. Bravely she went on, smiling with her mouth part, but not with her heart. She searched for relief from the hurting parts. Drugs, stimulus machines, herbal remedies played no real part in easing her pain. More and more she searched for relief, until too much of too much brought a parting not so sweet. The grief hit all of us in parts we didn't know existed, and our son was bent low by the part of him that left us. Rest well, dear Rochelle. Your part in our lives will never part.
Deb Griffin, first-time reader.
This to be a thank you as well as an apology to several of my body parts. This would include my liver, which since moving to the beach has worked harder than ever. But our words are limited, so I'll pick just one. My feet. I love my feet. No, not in a Quentin Tarantino foot fetish kind of way. Ew. I love how they perform. I love shopping for them. I love dressing them up and taking them out. So without further ado, I'd like to speak to them directly. You rock. Remember our 30th birthday? I know you do. At the stroke of midnight, at the exact moment when I left my 20s, I decided I wanted to be standing in a place that I could remember for the rest of my life. Yes, I know, the reflecting pool on the National Mall is freezing cold in November. It's so pretty. With the Washington Monument on one end and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. I bet Lincoln thought we were nuts. How about the other amazing places we've been? Wasn't Machu Picchu magical? And think of all the different shoes we've worn. Didn't you love those purple suede platforms? Oh, you didn't? All right. But we look damn good. Did you know that the average woman owns more than 25 pairs of shoes? I am pleased to report that in this particular category, I'm well above average. Once upon a time, these lovelies wore a size 5.5. People would ask me if my mother bound my feet as a child. Now I'm lucky to get into 7s. You performed magnificently, and for that I'm thankful. Why do you think I get pedicures? Did you think that was for me? Seriously? And we both love to dance. Cut loose, foot loose. Yes, that was for you. You're welcome.
Dennis Garrity.
Hi. All right. I was in Connecticut today. As an aside, drove 350 miles to get here instantly. On my way back from Geneva a day and a half ago, and I saw this billboard. I encountered this billboard that was the most amazingly galvanizing, emotionally experience that I've ever encountered as a billboard. And basically there was a background that was this searing red background of blood, and the pulse, the word just pulsated, and it said, "We are Sandy Hook," and we're here for love, and we just, I've been thinking about it ever since, Or, I'm sorry, we are Sandy Hook, and we choose love. It was, I figured you'd appreciate it, Okay, on a minor note, what you're going to hear right now is a collection of vignettes of what body parts do, when they do what they do, which is they collectively move, and it's a celebration of that. Legland, armed rubber bands, bobbleheads, 70s disco cred, neck extensions, dropping pretensions, fancy feet, pretty neat. This can be beat by a full sweep. Slinky snake, an undulating vibrational quake, giant steps, progress at its best. Preambling, foot fumbling, stumbling, crumbling, cavorting, then towering, jumping, jack, clickety-clack, feet a snap, hands a clap, moonwalking on earth, Michael Jackson's shuffle to nowhere, but high order movement of all our parts in concert, high five, got jive, stretching, fetching, overextension, kinetic reinvention, cartwheels, digging in heels, flipping like seals, dancing like Jennifer Beals, a flurry in a hurry, a bit of a scurry, the thump down the vertical slump, tumbling, a rumbling, free fall, humbling, body continues the stumbling. This is the deal if we ain't got wheels. We have our own motor seeming out of order, but as we force the start button, rolling up to a position to gravitate any condition, amazing momentum flows into place to avoid ultimate disgrace. Motion displaces place, rotating in a space. A triangular thing to realize my being. The thump to the thump, ambling, rambling, scrambling, with every step gambling on moving, flailing forward to step, strutting, sputtering, jerking, mechanical berserking, interconnective, interactive, coordinated, biomechanic, discombobulated, thumping, stumping, rotating, ka-cling, ba-bing, or something, mumbo, jumbo, herky, jerky, shuffling turkey, the thump, ka-clink. He's got out of the chair, who would have thunk, that tank, arms stretched around each other, connecting, maybe it's necking. Then the space with ooze and booze, where the body can never lose, landing in a small hoop. Glory G's, 11-year-old Brio aims to please. She's poetry in motion, golly me, down the alley, all in a breeze, pumping and pedaling till she flies with ease, like a disembodied volume hurling in mid-air, thrusting an oscillating appendage, like punching in space to push a spear in the air, twisting, scaling, till she dumps it in a round net bucket without a bottom to stop it. Then after all that, she somehow lands on her feet, pulling her arms down with a clenched fist to recognize the feet. The mind body in its most complete. Jumping, stumping, roiling, plopping, flipping, slipping, clipping, twirling, swirling, whirling, pirouetting, flying, falling, standing on a chair. Then lotus position, notwithstanding, but this is a meditative state. I am banning, as lying still, I guess, has its own thrill. Yet, this silent death of motion robs the body of all its commotion. And that's a very bad notion.
Hanson.
Body parts. I suppose everyone has read the book or seen the movie Jaws. I imagine most have as their main recollection the jaws of the great white man-eating shark, the dismembered torsos, arms, legs, grisly sights all. However, when I think back of Jaws, the body part that comes to my mind is the bladder of that police chief. The one his wife described as being as big as a watermelon, like all men's bladders. This was a shocking revelation to me when I first read this. I had often noticed how men could down 6 packs times 2, but after half a beer, I'd be searching out the newer saloon. As you can see, I put away a bit of consumables. Not particularly alcohol, but lots of calories nevertheless. Gluttony is no secret vice. But for the size of me, I have to admit, I have a very tiny bladder, by far the smallest portion of my body. I could go and tell you how small it is, but some of you are still eating and don't want to hear the multiple trips at night. But I can tell you that's why I switched from drinking Pinot Noir and Pinot Grigio to Pinot Noir, just to stifle the sleep-interrupting urges. I have finally, at my ripe age, learned to accept my body as it is. To phrase it differently, I have fought the good fight and lost, and now I'm just going to live with it. I'm one of the few people I know who, at this tender age, still has her wisdom teeth, real teeth, tonsils, and that baby fat that came with my first child 47 years ago. I'm so very thankful that my spotted, crepey skin wards off bacteria, that my senses are still intact, although not as sharp as they used to be, and most of all, I'm grateful that I can remember my sons' names and can find my way home after searching too long in the parking lot for my car. One problem I'm hoping to circumvent is this. Will I know my own name for many more years? Hence, the Hassan shirt that I wear.
Marjorie Weber.
Well, I grew up being Marjorie Foote, so you would think that that would be what I would write about. But something else came up, so here it is. We were talking after class about diet, and she said high protein, low carb. And we said why? Because she was not one who now or probably ever needed a diet. And she said it was because of her boyfriend who was diabetic and had this summer lost sight in one eye and needed to do something about it. After he went on the diet, he got his sight back, she said. His doctors couldn't believe it. This is what I remember when I was sitting waiting with my very patient husband in the Wills ER 2 days after Christmas, 11 hours after we arrived, and 8 days after I first began losing sight in my right eye, my good eye. This is what I remember when the nurse confidently draws 5 vials of blood, what I remember when they examine and re-examine my eye, and then examine it again, what I cling to while the MRI machine is clanging and banging and grinding for 45 minutes around my head. He got his sight back. Already I know that the news is not good. My doctor is young and thin and earnest, with heavy glasses of his own, and he has a kindness about him that I am grateful for. I know he wishes he could soften what he has to say. When close to midnight we finally see him for test results, he tells me it is NAION. In the long and short of it, that means they don't know exactly what caused the loss of sight. They have no way to treat it, and they don't expect my sight to come back. But some people do, I insist. He is blind, maybe 30%. As he talks, I think again of that random bit of conversation that plays like counterpoint to the doctor's pessimism, the coincidence of it, the effect of those 5 small words. He got his sight back, and I am hopeful.
And now a song from the Sergents.
Do a little bit what Stuart does. This is a song called St. James Infirmary. I heard it when I was about 12 years old, maybe 10, back in Chicago. Josh White did school back in the Kingston and that old thing, boom, boom. Somebody remember that a lot. And Tom Dooley. Well, he played at our high school. And no, It was we went up to the bicycle. I can remember. But in the song is it comes out of New Orleans originally. It's one of the oldest American blues songs, folk songs. I hate labels, but I do kind of bluesy like he did. So that's enough of that.
Chris Heidel.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. This is an excerpt from my novel, Undisclosed. Jack clicked and unclicked his pen. What do you mean, has you concerned? You know that if a body has been in the same position for an extended period of time, there will be blood settling, discoloration, and the extremes. Dr. Avellino paused. Since there are no signs of lividity, I can't tell if she's been moved, though given the rather cleanliness of this crime scene, I'm guessing she has been. But where is her blood? Dr. Avellino finished her external exam, noting specifics, such as a piece of clear tubing embedded near the victim's clavicle. I'll extract it during the autopsy, and we'll make sure the corporal receives it. Jack clicked and unclicked his pen again and again. He began to make a mental list of the required tubes, starting with medical supplies. Would you relax? Johnny said. The pen's open. Jack stopped. Habit. He could not click the pen. When someone noticed, there was a reason. This case made him uneasy. The missing blood. Where was it? And where was the primary crime scene? Jack watched Dr. Avellino take her reed thermometer and set to moving the victim's skin away from the slice down the center of the chest. She pulled the skin further apart, opening the victim's body to their scrutinizing gazes. Jack felt a sense of invasion, as if he wasn't supposed to be looking. This is so strange. Her silver eyes narrowed, and she stood shaking her head. No, this can't. It's just not. What? Jack and Johnny spoke at the same time. Dr. Evelina rose and stepped back, nearly losing her footing, but Jack reached out and steadied her. She brushed his arms away, squatted back down and looked again. I've never seen this before. She turned back to meet their eyes. Her liver is missing.
Tom Boyer.
Well, I can't help noticing Mary Beth's lucky enough to actually be able to produce a father on command. I got to get out my Ouija board. Fortunately, my dad's memory is a gift that keeps on giving. So this is about, in part, him. My father used the word propinquity to suggest the sinister forces of close association. One of Gary Larson's cartoons illustrates. In it, Ed's Dingo Dog Farm, with its fence lined with ravenous dogs, adjoins Doreen's nursery, whose yard holds a playpen full of tasty infants. The caption, Trouble Brewing. My father, it must be said, was irresistibly drawn to all things fragile and vulnerable. For example, he once took me to get a tetanus shot, which left me with a painful shoulder. For the rest of the day, whenever he encountered me, he somehow ended up touching that sore shoulder. My mother had chronic foot problems. For years, she wore open-toed sandals to avoid pressure on her injured toe. Great care was taken in the family to avoid contact with the toe. On the day in question, the three of us visited the Erasmus bookstore to browse the used books. It was in a house with stock on the first floor and also down a wooden staircase in the basement. We all entered together. I heard my mother's mildly exasperated voice telling Dad, "Don't you step on my toe." They remained upstairs. I went downstairs to examine the mysteries. Some time passed. It was an old house, and I could hear the sounds of feet moving around the floor above. Now and then the murmur of voices would drift down to me. Suddenly, there was a sharp exclamation. Steps hurried across the floor and clattered down the basement stairs. I emerged from the mysteries to encounter my father at the foot of the stairs, eyes wild, panting. He didn't have to tell me anything. It was all written there on his face. Propinquity had once again worked its ineluctable magic. He had stepped on a toe.
Our youngest Writers Guild member, 15-year-old Shane Lally.
You hear me all right? Yeah. My senses were attacked by a hot, filthy wave of madness tingling in the air. It stumbled through crowded streets, my suit covered in dust, my face covered in sweat and grime, bodies pressed against every side of me, though I tried to push them away. My personal bubble was obliterated in a city with no room to breathe. I wrinkled my nose, for the air was rotten and heavy. It would have been only 100 degrees without thousands of people compressed into the area. All I had heard of about India could not prepare me for such an assault. Why were all these people smiling at me? Did they enjoy my distress? I couldn't stand them. Couldn't stand any of it. The yellowed buildings, animal feces, pungent spices, and noise. Oh, the noise. like a radio of chaos blaring in your ear. I felt a long way from my peaceful apartment overlooking New York City, where life made sense and people acted with purpose, where towers of silver connected bustling streets to the sky, somewhere to escape human company. You could think clearly enough to make business decisions and get things done. All was straightforward at home. Now I wanted to scream at everyone to stop. I wanted to leave this crazy place and the pitiful sight of the poor. I feared those huddled in the dirt, no doubt eyeing my gold watch. No one was trustworthy because everyone was a stranger. I felt like a pig. Seeing women seemed to hover above the filth in spotless saris. When business was over, I would leave. Days after flying into Delhi, I had somewhat accepted the country's wildness. I had even found certain places where I could walk with a little crowd. It was saddening seeing the poor with nothing to lose. They seemed content with nothing, though I was glad I was not them. India shocked and horrified me. Yet, there I saw the most terrible and the most wonderful, beautiful things at the same time. Walking down the street, I saw a figure on the ground and squinted to see what it was. And in all my life, I have never been as struck. It was a man. He had a head and torso, but nothing else. He was a stub, someone desperately imprisoned in a body that could not move. He lay on an old skateboard, inching it along with his chin. My heart tore apart at the sight. Yet, just before I could look away, he looked up. Our eyes met, and he smiled. And in his eyes, I didn't see a crippled being. I saw the happiest person in the world. He looked at me with love and seemed like a king on top of the world. No misery leapt through his face. Did he know who he was? Did he believe it? I didn't have an ounce of pity for that man. I envied him. I wanted his life because he had something I never had. I pitied myself. Magic is something we may see as impossible or mythical. Yet in India it is real. It lives in any person who believes. Life is the picture we choose to see. I still can't grasp what these people had forever. A story of color and happiness. Yet returning from India, I never felt the same again. That man had taught me, well, you have to go to India yourself to find out.
Here.
First, gravity, male body parts. Mom's Mabley asked her doctor how to commit suicide. He said, shoot yourself just below your left breast. Back home, she followed his instructions to the letter and blew away her left I first learned body parts from Esquire magazine. Eyes, ears, mouth, breasts, arms, legs, thighs, booty, breasts. Female bodies airbrushed so perfectly that for me, certain critical parts went missing for way too many years. There's a serious side of body parts. The aftermath of 9/11 comes to mind. I prefer the lighter side. Like, do you really believe that is all of and only your mother's created body parts, the anatomy born and turned back to you? And what do they do with your old knee when they replace it? Can you get it back? Then there's body parts and clothes, or the lack thereof. So why do men's PJs have a fly? Why not squat like a woman? Forestall all those nasty comments about toilet seats left to the pension, little yellow spots scattered here and there. Consider gravity in body parts. Why is it that past a certain age, nobody wants to be on top? And in certain dedicated communities, those telling squeals and groans can only be heard during total darkness. If lovemaking must take place in a lit room or a secluded beach, there is a fix. For men, I suggest an Under Armour long-sleeve compression top. Black and never white. For women, a Spanx bodysuit with appropriately placed openings. Now men, pay special attention. You have no say in the placement of those openings. The locations of those openings are within your partner's complete and absolute discretion. You are this morning, and you may find that it's your body parts that have gone missing.
Sarah Barnett.
You know you've fallen off a cliff when magazines stop giving skincare advice for your age group. I turn the page and see 60s and beyond, as if I'm taking off on some grand adventure instead of starting a downhill slide. Even Oprah has given up on me. In another publication, I find jeans to slim my butt, a bathing suit that disguises flabby abs. Even these perky pieces divide into decades, and my particular decade is missing. To most of commercial America, I am invisible, a demographic blip on the horizon, about to disappear. But I've got bigger problems than wrinkles and flab. My short-term memory is gone. My brain works on a last-in, first-out system. Recent events disappear, as if I pushed the delete button. No wonder I can't remember why I'm standing in the garage staring at the toolbox. You can't call them senior moments when they last all morning. On the internet, I test myself to see if I'm smarter than a chimpanzee. I fail. I want to wipe that smirk right off that ape's face. My aging brain is full of potholes like the DC Beltway after a snowstorm. Brainpower.org assures me that neurobics will help build new pathways. I'm advised to shake up my routine, eat with my left hand, dress and shower in the dark. I'm thinking I should just make peace with the bumpy road ahead when I see the ad. For a mere $200, I can purchase a 6-month supply of Constant Focus, a powerful supplement to protect my brain from free radicals. I may not be able to remember if I ate lunch, but I recognize a scam when I see one. Still, the ad gives me hope. In a world where I'm mostly invisible, some profit-driven marketer is focusing on my age group. Kelsey Dugan.
past few poems that I've done, I used every single word possible, every 300, so I tried to compress it a little bit, and I tried some haikus, so he still feels the sand, sift through toes no longer there. The footprint hurts the most. This one, I started with one haiku and then another, and it ended up 7 that are separate but one as well. I don't know if you're allowed to do that or what, but edit it. So, and it was, I wrote it for a good friend of mine who just left to go to China, and it's about her daughter. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Is that better? Yes. Okay. It's called The Fire Dancer. The embers rise high. Her body moves to the beat. The fire dancer. With hair flowing free, born to dance round the flame, only for herself. Beautiful as she, this is when she is at peace, both body and soul. The drummers drum on, blending into one body, driving the dancer. They feel the rhythm in their hands, their drums, and hearts, working together. The fire is fierce. Sweat trails down her face and back, her feet black with ash. She dances till dawn, never once stopping for rest. The fire dancer.
And now a song from Terry Plowman. And Stuart.
How we doing, Kat? No. What happened to this? We'll make it work. I can hear it. How about you, Stuart? I enlisted Stuart's help on this one. When I heard the theme of the program, I immediately thought of this John Prine tune, in which he tells how he would like his body parts disposed after he dies. It's called "Please Don't Bury Me." Which one? That's all right, that's probably better. It's called "Please Don't Bury Me," and it's sort of a redneck version of organ donation. Woke up this morning, put on my slippers, walked in the kitchen and died. And oh, what a feeling when my soul went through the ceiling, and on up into heaven I did ride. When I got there they did say, "Dear, it happened this way. You slipped upon the floor and hit your head." And all the angels say, just before you passed away, These were the very last words that you said. You said, please don't bury me down in that cold, cold ground. I'd rather have them cut me up, pass me all around. Throw my brain in a hurricane, and the blind can have my eyes, and the deaf can take both of my ears if they don't mind the size. Give my stomach to Milwaukee if they run out of beer. Put my socks in a cedar box, just get them out of here. Venus to Milo can have my arms, look out, I got your nose. Sell my heart to the junk man and give my love to Rose. But please don't bury me down in that cold, cold ground. I'd rather have them cut me up, pass me all around. Throw my brain in a hurricane, and the blind can have my eyes, and the deaf can take both of my ears if they don't mind the size. Come on, Stuart. Give my feet to the footloose, careless, fancy free. Give my knees to the needy, don't pull that stuff on me. Hand me down my walking cane, it's a sin to tell a lie. Send my mouth way down south and kiss my ass goodbye. Please don't bury me down in that cold, cold ground. I'd rather have them cut me up, pass me all around. Throw my brain in a hurricane, and the blind can have my eyes, and the deaf can take both of my ears if they don't mind the size. Yeah, the deaf can take both of my ears if they don't mind the size.
President of the Rehoboth Beach Writers Guild, Frank Minnie.
Thank you. I've been asked to do a little ad. As you know, we send out a sign-up sheet every session. And one of the things we've learned from it is that over 50% of the people that attend are non-members. And we absolutely love that. Because I think it says something for the Guild. It's what we intended to do. However, if you look in that infamous orange bucket, you'll find one of these sheets. In case you're tempted to join us, there's a website in here. Go to the website, find out all the good stuff we do, and if you're so inclined, bring it back next month. Okay, I've been remiss coming to this microphone this past year or so in an attempt to catch up. The name of my piece is Gravity and Body Parts. And before I begin, I need to come up with some definitions. Gravity, of course, is the magnetic pull of the Earth, and it was invented by a genius who, instead of sleeping under a nearby elm tree, picked a tree full of ripe apples, got bopped on the head, and to cover up for his lack of smarts, invented gravity. Before that, glasses didn't roll off tables, I'm told. The other term I need to define, I got in a course called Human Growth and Development. And if you took the course, you remember that all the stages of life were covered in that course. And they spent the first half of the semester on the important stages of conception to 1 year of age. Then the rest of the semester took 1 year to adulthood. Adulthood was handled in the last 15 minutes of the last class. And that's because there's only a few things that you had to remember, and one of them is atrophy. Atrophy is the death of cells. Now, before maturity, growth of cells outpaces atrophy. After maturity, it's reversed. They were so kind as to give you the skin resiliency test. If you pull the skin on your wrist and watch how fast it goes back, it tells you where you are on the continuum. If you're sitting at a table with a 20-year-old, don't look. It's depressing. Okay, now we can start with body parts. And I guess the most logical place to start was the brain, but I'm going to skip that. I had a couple good reasons, but I can't remember what they are. So we'll go to the forehead. The forehead is that skin right above the eyebrows. Well, because of the forces of gravity and atrophy, it starts to fall over and collect right above the eyebrows until you acquire a look of a person stopped by a cop for going 70 miles an hour in a 15-mile-an-hour zone. It goes like this. Is something wrong, officer? The next part is the cheeks. The cheeks, you know, those nice rosy red bulbs. Well, because of atrophy and gravity, they start to fall. And how much they fall depends on how long you're out in the sun and exactly what number you used on your sunblock. It could diminish to something that's called a jowl. Next is the neck muscles. The neck muscles migrate to that section right underneath the chin and form a not too unattractive bulge until gravity and atrophy go to work. And again, depending on your sunbathing habits and the number on your sunblock, could be called a waddle. And gentlemen, you know how proud you were of those pecs and biceps after sending away for the isometric exercises that you found on the back of a match pack. And maybe you even bought the Naugahead bench with the weights. Well, those biceps, because of gravity and atrophy, start to fall into the area of the tricep. And then they kind of turn into wrinkly brown skin, depending on how often you hung your arm at the window in the wintertime. No problem, wear a long-sleeve shirt. The pecs, well, maybe you remember the Seinfeld episode where George's father was going to get rich with the man bra. Well, that was pretty funny before I was 50. It now has a different effect, and I'm told that if you wind up with a D cup, you don't get the same reaction as a female counterpart. That brings us around to the back muscles, which migrate to the front and cause a rather large bulb, not unattractive, until gravity and atrophy start to take effect, and it starts to droop, and it may get so bad that you can't find your, well, you know. Anyway, your problems start because you're down to the last hole in your belt. And if you're like most men, you don't have much in the way of hips. So the only thing you got left is a nice bulbous butt that Forrest Gump called, what do you call those? The buttocks. Yeah. And so you look in the full-length mirror and you find out you don't have any buttocks. You don't know how far they have migrated because you can't turn your neck around so far, but no problem. You buy a pair of suspenders and go with your belt and you solve the problem. Well, that is what I'm going to deal with, except, gentlemen, you need to know that at no time during this talk did I talk about any female body parts affected by gravity and atrophy. And the simple reason is because female body parts aren't affected by gravity and atrophy. And if they are, you don't notice it. And if you do, you certainly wouldn't say anything. Thank you.
Judy Catterton.
Vagina. There, I've said it out loud and in public. Why do I feel uncomfortable saying it? When did it and penis become dirty words? When my son was little, I was determined that he would learn the real names for male and female body parts. What they are, where they are, and who has what. I remember sitting at our kitchen counter quizzing him with the names of family and friends. What does Daddy have? And Mommy, Uncle Steve, Aunt Karen,
I was well pleased until I got to my friend Irma. He looked confused when I asked him, "What does Irma have?" He looked off in the distance. "Does she have a penis or a vagina?" He stared at me. Finally, he answered, "She has a green car." As children, my cousin Henry and I thought we had figured out the mystery of where babies come from. Having watched our share of movies, we deduced that babies were caused by kissing. Later, realizing our mistake, we decided it had something to do with penises and women's belly buttons. My father used to talk about women's problems, and by that he didn't mean the difficulty of finding a job with equal pay for equal work. Nor was he referring to how hard it is to find a good-fitting bathing suit. No, to my father, women's problems included everything from menstrual cramps, to pregnancy, to yeast infections, to cervical cancer. Lest we conclude that this reticence to use the real names for the real body parts is historic, only a few weeks ago, I was in a conversation with an acquaintance. He was telling me that his wife had a medical problem. Down there, he said. It was all I could do from saying, "You mean in Richmond?"
Plowman's Flying Nun. For 8 years I lived on a boat. No TV. When time and tide forced me ashore, I resumed contact with the outside world, only to find a great plague sweeping our nation. Actually, many plagues. The Flying Nun, grounded with bad bones, and many other serious problems. Restless leg, social anxiety, thinning eyelashes. Lucky for us, the pharmaceutical scientists were on the case. One syndrome left me perplexed. It had 2 advertisements. One with a man in his kitchen whose wife rushes to his side when the faucet breaks. Another with a couple holding hands in side-by-side bathtubs in the middle of nowhere. I asked myself, what about the plumbing? And then lightning struck. Oh no, it's about their plumbing. And the most puzzling thing was, they didn't tell you to take a pill. They just said, "See Alice." No other information, just "See Alice." All I knew was that these commercials were on every 5 minutes. Alice must be one busy babe. And hot. And I got to thinking, maybe these commercials could be a little less oblique. Get a spokesperson, like the Flying Nun with her Boniva. But who? They called this plague ED. Who could be Mr. ED? Mr. ED. Mr. Ed! Who better discuss your problematic manly situation than America's most trusted horse? And I pictured him in all his equine splendor on every TV screen in the country. Can't be there for your mare? Can't get silly with your filly? Then take the big pill with my picture, and you'll never, ever be limp as a haddock in the paddock.
Gary Hannah.
I have one short poem. Oh,
Okay, isn't that better? All right, it's called landscape. A woman's body is a beautiful thing. Soft hills, gentle curves, supple indentations, a whole landscape of gardens pleasing the eye. But somehow I missed it. Didn't observe when I was young. Went for the eyes. Small straight nose, silky fine hair, warm twitch of the mouth into the smile, eyes gleaming. I went for the face of the thing, the outside appearance. I went for the whole, the shape, not the appreciation of parts. The face and the eyes had it all. I didn't think body as I do now.
Very tough.
I was 12 in 1939 and fell in love with Judy Garland as she followed the yellow brick road with a scarecrow who won the brain, the tin man who craved a heart, and the cowardly lion who was fraught with fear, based on a novel in 1900, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. I was also intrigued with the films of Boris Karloff as a creature produced by an unorthodox scientific experiment using body parts. The Modern Prometheus, a novel by Mary Shelley, was published anonymously in London in 1818. In 1974, Mel Brooks made Young Frankenstein. The creature, played by Peter Boyle, is about to ravage Elizabeth, played by Marilyn Monroe. The scene opens and she is lying on her back, her face filled with doubt, while the nameless creation, standing over her, smiles as he slowly takes off his jacket. He moves over her. She mutters in the darkness, "I'm not afraid of you." Then after a few seconds of silent darkness, her voice sings out, "Oh, sweet mystery of life, at last I have found you. At least I know the secret of it all. At least we have learned it all." Thus, Frankenstein's creation was complete. And in no small way. We will never know what Mel Brooks' imagination would have done had he made a version of The Wizard of Oz. At least, what body part would the scarecrow with a brain and the tin man with a heart now be seeking? Would the lion be more aggressive? Most likely Dorothy would be a tempting woman. And there may be a scene where she, for very different reasons from the original in 1939, would joyfully sing, "Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly." I prefer to remember my love for an innocent 12-year-old Judy Garland.
Our last reader tonight, Irene Fick.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good. Have you gained weight? These were Mom's first words after my grueling freshman year. The question haunted me as girls, then women, critiqued each other's bodies. Did you put on pounds? You seem a bit bloated. Your jeans look snug. School reunions led to the cattiest snickers. Did you see her? She really got fat. Never mind if our former classmate just won a Nobel Prize. Her weight gain made her a loser. I'm fed up, no pun intended, With this neurotic obsession with weight, we have three choices for coming to grips with our extra flesh. We can lose it, camouflage it, or learn to live with it. Number one, lose it. Many of us have drifted through the draconian labyrinth of diets, but instead of peace, we found dead ends. Our struggle for a svelte silhouette brought us to South Beach, The Zone, Jenny Craig, Atkins, low carb, high carb, low fat, and so on. We also devised our own specialties. In my 20s, it was coffee and M&Ms. I got really thin, but my teeth decayed, and I bonded with my dentist and fattened up his retirement fund. We can also choose to camouflage it. A generation ago, our mothers' corsets and girdles bound their bellies, thighs, hips, and butts till they could barely exhale. Later, we discovered control-top pantyhose. Today, we're still sucking it all in Spanx. Even the name connotes punishment. If we prefer to breathe, we can cover up our protruding parts by shopping at Chico's. Break down this word and you have chic and O, as in, oh God, my unsightly bulges have disappeared under these stretchy fabrics and loose flowing prints. Lastly, we can live with it. Finally, we can wiggle out of our Spanx, cut up our Chico cards, ditch the diets, toss the tape measure, and sequester the scale to the basement next to our thigh master. We can learn to love our body parts, stop sizing each other up with toxic questions like, have you gained weight? After all, what have we got to lose?
We will close the night out with one more song from Stuart.
This song is it's about eyes and hands and hair, mostly about legs. Legs is in the chorus. But it's actually written by a gal named Linda Williams, and I got to talk to her about this song. She's a great songwriter. She writes songs, she said, you got to put an emotion in the song to get people to listen. So, but if you put one emotion in and they don't happen to like it, you lose it. So she wrote this song specifically to get as many emotions in it as she could. And it's got bunches. It's got honor, it's got lust, greed, vengeance, murder, hate, honor, truth, and in the end, justice. It's got it all. Take your pick. And it's called Stepping Out Nancy, and it's a wonderful song about doing the right thing. Near Cheyenne in Wyoming lived a maiden fine and fair. She had eyes that shone like diamonds. She had long golden hair. A cattleman, he came riding. He came to her father's door, mounted on a milk-white pony. He came at the stroke before. So step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Step it out, Nancy, if you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Show your legs to the wealthy man. I have come to court your daughter, Nancy of the golden hair. I have wealth and I have money. I have goods beyond compare. I will buy her silk and satin and a gold ring for her hand. I will build for her a mansion. She'll have servants to command. So step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Step it out, Nancy, if you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Show your legs to the wealthy man. Nancy said, but I love a cowboy, and I promised him my hand.
I don't want your goods and money. I don't want your house and land. Nancy's father spoke up sharply. He said, you'll do as you are told. You'll be married on this Sunday, and you will wear that band of gold. So step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Step it out, Nancy, if you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Show your legs to the wealthy man. The cattleman spoke with fury. He said, you will not have that man. And he rode from town in anger with his rifle in his hand. He came back from Colorado. On his pony was a sack, deep red with the blood of her cowboy slung across the back. So step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Step it out, Nancy, if you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Show your legs to the wealthy man. Nancy wept, she cried in anguish. She wept and tore her hair. She slipped into her father's room, found a pistol lying there. On Sunday came the wedding. The town folk gathered at noon. They saw Nancy pull the pistol and shoot down that wealthy groom. So step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Step it out, Nancy, if you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling, and show your legs to the wealthy man. Nancy said, I am not sorry. When the jury heard the tale, though he rots beneath the ground, and I shall rot in jail. But there in that crowded courtroom, 12 good men took their stand, said, we will not hold you, Nancy, for killing that wealthy man. So step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Step it out, Nancy, now you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Show your legs to the wealthy man. Step it out, Nancy. Step it out, Nancy, now you can. Step it out, Nancy, pretty darling. Show your legs to the wealthy man.
Thank you. We will see you back in March. This theme is firsts. Thank you.